The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and help me welcome Dr. Mosely, the Superintendent of Nashua Schools. Welcome aboard.
How you doing?
Okay. You've been a busy man lately. We got a lot of things on the fire.
Sure.
And the biggest thing, I guess, is your strategic plan and your implementation. Is that, would you think that's your number one or not? You don't even have a number one here.
There's a couple of number ones.
Okay.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. There are a lot of exciting things going on in the district, and one of them actually happens to be the strategic plan. If I can just kind of give the background story on it, this is a long time coming. When I first started, when I say interviewing, but when you're running for or applying for the superintendency, it doesn't really feel like you're applying. It feels like you're campaigning. You know, and so part of what I proposed, and I said in my candidacy, I said it's important that as a district you have a plan. And so from my perspective and my vision coming into the district at Nashua is to really provide that type of structure and plan. So this has been in my mind long before I started, but actually when I started, I really wanted to get it going. So we spent approximately a year really developing it. We did focus groups, we did surveys, we did a lot of great things, and we really came up with a plan that was really focused. And doing a strategic plan is really being strategic and creating the plan. And we were very mindful of how we wanted to do it. We didn't want to create 20 goals with 25 initiatives, because when you do that, you really don't have a plan. You just have a bunch of little things here and there. So what we did is that we came up with essentially 5 goals that we wanted to focus on, and we made some revisions to our mission, vision, and value statements. And so those goals are focused on the whole child, professional development, community. Of course, it's focused on whole child, professional development, and community. Oh, I got the 5th one. I forgot the 5th one. Community. It'll come to me. Budget, and then we did some revision on the.
That's the important part too.
What's that, budget? Yeah. School culture, professional development, community. Community outreach and engagement, yes. So anyways, that's basically what we did. And we really made some revisions around the mission. And really what we wanted to do, our original mission had I think, 39 words. And so that doesn't count the and the. So it was really pretty extensive. So we really shortened that down, and really our mission, if you ask me, Jamal, sum it up in about 2 words: whole child.
Really?
Whole child, the education of the whole child, yes.
Whole child. Okay. How does that actually work out and fold into the normal educational part of the program? So
that's a interesting question and a very good question. And when you say the whole child, first of all, what am I talking about? What do I mean by that? How do we put that in a context for people who aren't in education, or just say the average person who's watching this show? So really, the whole child is really about not just thinking of students as data points, because that's very dangerous, because we don't want one score to define a child. Well, when we talk about student achievement, we're talking about students, not so much a score, but making growth. And each of us grows in different ways. And as a result of that, we measure that not by one test score, by multiple assessments. We also take into consideration kids, how they are in terms of their readiness to learn and preparedness. And really where I'm getting down to is around the social emotional welfare and well-being. And we have kids who come to our schools who are experienced trauma, kids that come to our schools that have mental health concerns. And when you look at the whole child, it's important to think about your child or a child in your classroom that brings all of these different types of concerns and variables into their learning environment. And so part of that is, number one, really building what I call a human capital infrastructure for our faculty and for our students to support that. Number three is really consistency throughout the district. As much as I'd like to think I'm the first round draft pick in terms of superintendencies, but what we all have to recognize a couple of things. I am the third superintendent here in about 5 years. That's a lot of transition. That's a lot of different ideas coming and going. And really what the plan does for the next 5 years says we got 5 things, we're focused on those 5 things, and we're going to do it with fidelity. We're going to come up with a financial structure to do so. And certainly the plan gets us focused in that. You could make the argument, or anyone can make the argument that, what about this? What about this? What about that? And everything I would say is totally correct. We could, number 21, that's on the priority list in terms of, I'm just making this up, I don't know if it's really 21, so don't quote me on the day. Go back and say, hey, Mosely wasn't doing the right thing here. I get it. Number 21, to improve the sidewalks down in Bicentennial, whatever it is, that is important. But in terms of the focus over the next 5 years, that didn't rise to a priority. Sometimes I feel like I'm rambling, but you can stop me.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get the feel for is, how does this mesh together with what people think of as normal objectives of the schools, and how does that compare you to other schools?
So when you think about what is today's learner, and how do we conceptualize the 21st century? And part of what I would say, you and I growing up, you go to school, you go to college, and you get a job, you raise a family, the dog, the picket fence, all those different things. Well, in the 21st century, where the automation of jobs is starting to take hold, you and I, when we went to school and college, what did you go? Tell me a little bit about. Did you go to? Tell me the university you studied at.
The University of Wisconsin.
Oh, Badger. You're a Badger.
And then University of Notre Dame for my graduate degree.
Really?
Yeah.
You're a Fighting Irish?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing. It's good in a way, but 2 of my kids too went there.
Good. Wow. Oh, you must like the cold.
Excuse me?
Must like the cold?
Oh, no, that's not that bad. It's amazing, because I was in 30-degree below weather in Wisconsin, and it didn't feel that way.
All right, well, go Gimper, right? Go do one for the Gimper, right? In other words? All right. Anyways, but just getting back to, she's like, well, how do you conceptualize schools? And, the environment, the global economy has redefined our schools. And now, when you and I went to school, you say, oh my God, if I have a question, you go to the library. Sometimes you go to your professor. That's not working for our kids anymore.
That's different.
They can reach in their phones and grab it, and that little device that you and I call a cell phone, it's a cell phone, it's a computer, it's everything.
Yeah.
The other thing is that, and this is what I call a shift, is that our kids now are not getting jobs. We got to teach our kids how to create jobs and be innovative. And really, what I say the plan really promotes, and what I promote, and what we want to embrace failure. Because failure results in iterations of something that's really spectacular and success. So saying, equation failure, yes. But when failure comes, it's how do you recover from it? How do you learn from it? And how do you create the next innovation or iteration to do well? And the perfect example I show this, and I don't have it with me, I can pull out my phone and show you, is that I always show, when we have these discussions with people, I say to things, I say, I'm going to show you the first iMac, and it's this big little thing, and it's like hard to navigate. It's got this big wire connected.
Oh yeah,
and then
I did that in college.
Right. Then you show the next iteration, right?
Yeah.
The next one, and that's what we want to promote. Our kids are not going to go out and apply for jobs. Our kids are going to create jobs. They're going to be the next entrepreneurs. They're going to be, in 15 years, I'd be surprised if anyone's driving. There's going to be automated driving, which means it's going to be a whole nother industry.
But the parents that are going to support your implementation of this program are going to have to understand this is different than their experience too. And you're going to have a lot of challenges because of that, because they don't understand how you're going to get to where you want to be. Can you explain it a little differently to them?
So I think the first step is having that dialogue. The second step is watching the show too. We have done, it's a very good point. And what I'm going to do is like, not just do this in a vacuum, but I also have some scheduled events where I can go and engage parents, particularly at the middle schools and throughout the community, to talk about the plan, to talk about where this fits into the bigger picture. I totally get it. It is a shift in how we think, a shift in terms of philosophy, and it is a shift in paradigm in terms of how we're defining and looking at education.
Right. How are you going to, is there any other schools in New Hampshire that are doing something similar to what you're trying to do?
Well, I would say that I'd have to do some research, but given where I see us, and I don't make any bones about this, but I believe that Nashua is the model. We are the model of what we want to be. We are what I would say the model for metropolitan education. I would say not just in New Hampshire, but from my perspective, the nation. And I don't say that to sound arrogant or nothing like that. I say that because I believe in what we're doing. I believe that we are learning from this. I believe our next plan after this expires is going to be just as spectacular and then dynamic as the one we currently have.
Have you looked at some of the charter schools and how they do it too?
Not individual. In all fairness to what I think you're asking, did I just think of this plan out of my my mind? No, I did not.
No, I don't mean that. I was just meaning in comparison to what you're doing, what they're doing, because some of them seem to be very accomplished anyway, in the traditional way.
I don't understand the question.
Well, they're not as focused on this broader development of the student, if that's a correct description.
Okay, I would have to say I have to look at what particular charter school you're making reference to.
Okay, well, the one right here in Nashua.
Okay, so what is their charter? What does it say?
The arts and
ASD, you mean?
The one that's on Amherst Street. I can't remember the exact name. The one that they got the votes for being #1 in New Hampshire.
Oh, well, that's us. I'm sorry, I don't know anything.
No,
we're number one. I mean, I don't.
But, I've been out there going to them because I give them some old geographic books for their library, National Geographic.
This is this is what I would say. And number one, a couple things. I didn't personally develop the plan. I worked with a team of people. We collaborated with various stakeholders. The mayor's office, school board members, teachers, administrators. This was a collaborative process. The one thing I do not believe in is like saying charter schools versus public schools. I think that charter schools serve a purpose for certain demographics that are looking for that. Also, parochial schools as well also serve that purpose. So I can't really speak to how there might be there might be some ideas that do mirror in terms of philosophy. I think we all want the best for our kids in Nashua, so that's the best thing. Parents have a predilection for whether it's the private or the public. I am completely biased. I always will be as long as I'm here. I think the public schools are the best. I say that not because I'm the superintendent. I say that because my own kids go to the public schools, and I really believe in them.
Okay. Well, I went to public schools too, and
Notre Dame's not public. Is it? Notre Dame's not a public school. It's a private school.
No.
Notre Dame's is a private school, right?
Well, but not Wisconsin, and.
Well, no. Well, hold on. Wisconsin.
No, I was talking about the high schools.
Okay.
The high school I went to.
Okay.
Public schools, elementary schools, so.
Okay.
In fact, I watched one public school go up in fire. It was right next to where I lived. It had a fire. The boiler exploded and went right up burned the whole school down. Anyway, wound up going to some church for my final 8th grade class.
Okay.
But anyway,
Is that in Nashua?
No. I was down Long Island. I grew up in New York.
You're a New Yorker?
Yeah, originally.
You Red Sox or Mets? I'm sorry, New York. Oh, Yankees.
No, it was the Yankees when I was down there, but I became a Red Sox
I should
fan.
not be doing this interview with a Yankee fan. How'd this work out?
No, I'm not.
Oh my goodness.
I'm a Red Sox fan now.
Oh, good.
All right. But anyway, what I was comparing it to was you were talking about the developing the person. They're going to be the leaders, the changes in the, and I see this school, this why can't I remember the name of it? But it is what they're doing. They have a lot of kids there in very advanced courses, and they're the kind of ones that are going to develop new. I think that are going to develop new things too, and that's so I was just wondering if you just compared their approach to what you're doing.
Well, I would just say we have kids in advanced courses as well,
Yeah.
and we have kids who are who need extra supports, and certainly those kids are talented too. But I would say that when we look at these things, is that it doesn't matter how you start the game, so to speak, it's how you end it. We have many kids that start off who are slow learners. We have also kids who speak other languages, ELL students that they're very proficient in their second language, but not proficient in English. And so part of it is that we look at that and we say that despite some of those academic, what we call challenges or benchmarks that you struggle to reach, you still can do it. And our kids do very well. I mean, our kids, our middle school kids, they'll do well in school, but they also do well in the theater. They also do well on the track team. They also do well on the chess team. Just recently, I was actually at a performance at Fairgrounds Middle School, and the kids did a wonderful job with a theater production. We have kids who volunteer in the community. Today I was over at New Cyril's, and there was a dedication to the playground for our preschool. It's small little kids running around, but there was a high school former student there who came Boy Scout, and he did a wonderful job creating the structure for our kids. The great thing about Nashua that I just love is that you've got all walks of life, kids with different talents that maybe school isn't their forte, but they do other things in the community, which is nice.
Well, that's one question I had too. You do have a complex type of or student body with anywhere from very bright kids to some with very much disadvantages because of physical problems and stuff like that. And you have a language problem too, I imagine.
I don't look at it as a problem. No, I look at it as an attribute. I look at it as something that's awesome. I look at something when we have kids speaking different languages and coming from different environments. I think that's great. I think that's what the world is all about. I love it. I welcome it. I mean, I love to hear kids speaking Spanish or Swahili in our schools. I love it because ultimately, I'll say it to say it, that Nashua is the microcosm of America. It is a reflection. So I don't look at it as a problem. I don't look at it as a challenge. I look at it as, you know what I really look at it as? Yeah, family. It's family here. It's great. Yeah, that's who we are.
Yeah. Well, that's I feel that way too. But doesn't that cause some problem in their ability to have the teachers communicate with the students that don't speak English?
We have, a couple of things. We do have bilingual faculty who can assist with that language barrier at times. We also have capable teachers who can do that. We certainly have those supports. Just recently, we hired an ELL communication specialist that is available to help out families and parents with that level of communication. We also send communication out, written communication in multiple languages to close that gap, excuse me. It's never absolute in terms of 100% communication, but I think the last time I checked, I think we had like 61, 62 different languages spoken here in Nashua.
Well, that's true. There's a lot of these things, but that doesn't impede the ability to learn the basic things that you're teaching.
I think that it is always a challenge when you're an ELL student coming in for the first time. Right. Absolutely. But I also think it's a challenge that we welcome, it's a challenge that we support, and we do the best we can in terms of providing those students and all students with the best education. It takes time, but we as a public school, we never say no.
Well, let's get to I guess you're trying to get away from just one test, but that is one way that they are, as a state, measuring the competency of the proficiency of the students. Isn't that true?
I think they are measuring proficiency. There is the state test. There's also a test we use, iReady.
Yeah.
Also, our kids take like formative assessment tests
Right.
in their classrooms. There are tests that kids need to be able to be, understand, absolutely. But I also want to make very clear, but there's a saying that I call it triangulation of the data. Mm-hmm. And what that really means is that taking different data points and coming up with a narrative of what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. And really that's what the whole child really promotes. It's really about taking different data points and really connecting them with the understanding of the mindfulness and the social emotional pieces to that.
Well, is that something you plan to communicate to the parents and the people who are paying the taxes to support the schools? Is how that works? Mm-hmm. Because if they see things like the recent numbers that were coming out and showing that Nashua schools have, below 50%, according to their measures, how do you combat that?
What measure? So what assessment are you making reference to? Are you making
ones
reference?
that were in the newspaper that the state published, and showing us that our proficiency's going down a notch or two.
Okay.
In the students in the 4th and 8th grade tests or something, I think that was.
What source are you quoting?
Well, I have it in here anyway. I thought you couldn't have missed that. Anyway, is there a way that you can show that you have other measurements or other ways of looking at?
Sure. Absolutely.
How can you do that?
We do. First of all, we have kids report cards. We have cards. We have kids that do iReady assessments. We do a lot of different things for our kids.
Well, how do you want to be compared to the performance of other schools?
Well, a couple of things. So you have to be careful with that, because the only thing that I would say is that when you're looking at student growth, or you're looking even at data set, understand that the larger the number of kids, then the score is affected. Yeah. So really that you have to look at communities that have the same number of population and demographics of our student
that's
population.
That's a problem, I realize, with the large number of students.
So we look at like Manchester, some of the school systems that mirror us, who also have our student population as well in terms of demographics, to student teacher ratio as well. So all of those things factor in. So we, for instance, in Nashua, we have a larger number of first graders than a place like Merrimack. You know what I mean? So all of those things are important when you're looking at, compare and contrast. One of the things that I would just say, would always say caution a little bit, when you start to compare and contrast, you're really saying, I'm better than you, or we're better than them, or like that. That's not the way we look at it ourselves, as we are in a race that mirrors our own growth. We want to be the best. If you ask me what every student, what every teacher want, we're not satisfied with ever being number 4. We of course say, who doesn't want to be number 1? The one thing that, if you want to talk about, I think Nashua, maybe about 6 months ago, was named number 1 place to live or to grow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And part of it has to be with the schools. Part of it has to do with the great things we do at the schools.
But how do they know your school is being measured differently than the other schools? They take those numbers.
Who's they?
Whoever's looking at a comparison, who's saying that Nashua's highly rated. How do you? I haven't heard or seen any literature that shows that Nashua has a high success rate with the students. I know you have some.
You haven't seen our graduation rate? Well, I'll give it to you.
Well, I'll tell you, 3 years ago, I saw one report from the community colleges that said that a high number of your graduates from high school were taking remedial classes.
Really?
That was 3 years ago.
have you
Do
seen
they
any-
do that? No, they changed it. They don't have remedial courses there, but they have them
Just-
taking basic courses to get in community college.
Just curious, have you seen any of our graduations?
Have I seen individual ones?
Yeah, have you seen any of those?
No,
I'll forward you some things, but one of the things I think is great about our kids, you say you want to see some proof, it's right there in front of you. We've seen kids with the National Honor Society. We have kids getting into
I've seen some of that,
to like
yeah.
top schools. I mean, any school they want. We had last year, there were kids that got into Dartmouth, UCLA, Brown, BC. I mean, those are the types of things that's great. It's the end game. And by the way, I'll just say one thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be about a school or even a college. We have kids that say, I don't want to do that. I want to serve. I want to serve our country. And for me, I want to say to those kids, first of all, and to their families, thank you for that sacrifice. I say, I want to be part of the military. I'm going to join the Marines, and that in itself, to me, is a form of higher ed and college and
definitely.
And serving.
There's a lot of different ways of doing it.
I think that there is ample examples of our kids. And have you been to any of our like Read Across America or have you been a guest reader or anything like that? If you haven't, I'm going to make you a guest reader. I'm going to tell you one thing. If I make you a guest reader, you're going to go into any school you want, and you'll see the great things happening in our schools.
I'd love to do that.
Thank you.
Would. But part of your job is going to be selling this program to the people who are paying the taxes.
What program? You mean the strategic plan?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't look at it as a program. I look at it as a vision and a focus for the district.
Well, okay, whatever you want to call it, but this is what you're trying to do with teaching the kids, okay? This is your way of approaching it all. It's different, so everybody's going to question you about it more and try to compare it to things that they're familiar with.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm trying to do now, to find out how you picture your class coming out, compare it to other ones.
So this is what I picture in my mind, that all of our kids will be, at the end of their 12th grade, they'll be prepared to engage the global economy and higher ed. Okay. And they can do anything they want. That would be what I say the vision. The vision is we want our kids to come back to our here, come home and continue to grow Nashua. We want our kids to be the next innovators. So when I say that, you say, like, what does that look like? It means that we want them to be able to build the next or envision the next iteration of the computer. Like a Bill Gates or Steve Jobs.
Well, any one of those. A lot of them don't even go through college to get to be the multi-billionaire. But it is a selling job that you have.
I don't know if it's a selling job, but I just think more it's a communication job.
Well, that's selling.
Okay.
Communicating is selling. It depends how you do it, because people have to be able to listen and understand how you're communicating.
And I have to be able to listen too.
Yeah.
And also, the most important thing is to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I don't know all the answers, but I do know some. If I don't know the answer, I'll certainly get the right answer or an answer for people who have questions.
Are you planning on having some kind of a measurement that makes that's more familiar to people who are asking these questions? Like, for example, how well will they be doing in community colleges? Mm-hmm. Do you get any feedback now?
We do have a system called Naviance that tracks our kids. It doesn't, because kids sometimes move around. Like, for instance, we have kids that might go to the University of Notre Dame for 2 years and then transfer somewhere else. Sure. We have kids that take a gap year.
Them for 4 or 5 years.
Yes, that would be something we could definitely. Kids who go into the military and then they get out of the military, then they go to school or they do civil service or something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's great.
Well, that's something I think you ought to look into, and maybe we can do it another time and talk a little bit more about
love to
how you're succeeding in this approach, because I know a lot of people are asking questions about it.
Oh, well, thank you. And I'll give you some information on community events and have the people who are asking you questions to come out and talk to me, and we'll have a dialogue.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's been great.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.